Well, I'm delighted today to be speaking to Sandra Louw from Trident Trust. We're here today at the Beau Rivage in Geneva, where we're going to be hosting our networking dinner tonight. Welcome, Sandra.
Thank you very much for having me, David. I'm really honoured to be here and looking forward to talking about Swiss trustees with you, and looking even more forward to meeting some familiar faces, some old friends, and some new people.
So we've got 140 guests registered for tonight. We've got many professionals from Switzerland, the UK and elsewhere. You sponsored before in Zurich, but it's your first time sponsoring with us in Geneva. So I hope you're looking forward to the event tonight.
I definitely am looking forward to it. I think it says a lot that we were previously sponsoring in Zurich, and would love to expand our association and be present in Geneva and support you in Geneva as well.
Fantastic. So a lot has changed in terms of Swiss trusteeship. It'd be great to have a chat and focus in on that for the interview today. So perhaps for those less familiar, perhaps those based overseas, what are the headlines of what's changed?
I think the headline at the moment is that regulations have been introduced in Switzerland, that Swiss trustees are now regulated by FINMA. Look, this really goes back about 3 years ago. Switzerland has historically been a major center where trusts have been administered. That was introduced already in 2007 with the introduction of the Hague Trust Convention. And ever since, trustees in Switzerland administer trusts according to foreign law. This went very well. There is a really dense network of really well-qualified professionals here. But we also realized that for the integrity of Switzerland as a jurisdiction, trustees were really quite lightly regulated.
What were the most common jurisdictions that trusts will be managed if they're using foreign law? What would come up most often?
Look, there's a real sprinkling of jurisdictions that we see. The Channel Islands and Jersey is a very traditional jurisdiction that is often requested and used. We also do see jurisdictions like Singapore, New Zealand, yes, BVI, Cayman, Bahamas, really all of that you will find in trust structures within Switzerland.
And you mentioned before that the industry was traditionally very lightly regulated. Do you think that increasing regulation will drive up standards? Perhaps those players in the market not willing to be regulated will not be in business any longer, and so that it will drive quality in the market. What's your perception of how these regulations will impact?
Look, the regulations initially impact on all of us. To give you an example, the legislation was actually introduced in January 2020. And at that point in time, FINMA asked all trustees who either thought that they are qualifying as trustees or who are interested in being better regulated to register on their platform. At that point in time, there were about 400, just under 400 trustees. The FINMA also allowed all trustees a 3-year period to implement this new legislation. Practically, this meant that by December last year, December 22, everybody needed to actually hand in a fairly complete application to FINMA. Out of the original almost 400, about just shy of 180 actually went ahead with a full application. And by the end of December, 28 had their licenses. So only 28 licenses were issued by then. The current status is that there are just short of 40 with licenses. So yes, the numbers speak for themselves. There is definitely some consolidation happening in Switzerland. It should absolutely drive up standards. It gives consistency to how trusts will be administered. And it is there for the protection of the client at the end of the day. Absolutely, I think, a good decision by Switzerland.
So just to clarify in people's minds, perhaps you could just explain the difference between Swiss trustee services and Swiss trust law.
It's an interesting question, David, and there is a lot of confusion. Often when people come to us, they say, I want a Swiss trust. It is just the way that we discuss these matters. And there is a technical difference between a Swiss trust and a Swiss trustee. Switzerland currently does not have a Swiss trust law. What we are doing is we are administering trusts in accordance with the ability provided to us by the Hague Trust Convention, and we are administering it according to the laws of a foreign country. And this gives us this interesting ability to administer a trust that is maybe according to the laws of Jersey or according to the laws of Singapore, and it provides a great benefit to the client to pick and choose we call it a proper law, to pick and choose the proper law that is most beneficial to their circumstances. But Switzerland itself does not have any trust law. There was a bill that was put forward for discussion in January 2020. And unfortunately, to date, there has been no real agreement amongst all the interested parties, the cantons and the tax authorities, on how this trust law will look. It does not really affect our ability to provide trust services, mostly to foreign clients. I think the reason why Swiss trust law is such a discussion at the moment is that it would mainly benefit Swiss residents who are looking for a structure like a trust, which they currently do not have access to. But this, I'm not sure when or if this will be implemented. I do not think, however, it will really have much of an impact on the clients who are currently using Swiss trustee services.
So the regulation has changed, but the law is still in discussion.
Correct.
Yeah.
The regulations are there to provide some protection to clients, and it is there to ensure that there is a very high and common standard by which you can measure the services provided by Swiss trustees. You do not need a local trust law in order to do that. We have not needed it since 2007, and I do not think even if a Swiss trust law is implemented, it would change that situation.
And those clients and their advisors looking at setting up new structures, there's obviously a lot of opportunities in different jurisdictions they could set up and establish new structures. Why is it that you think they would be picking Switzerland? What kind of fact pattern plays to the strengths that you have here?
I come back to the fact that Switzerland is a major financial center. The most common factor that we see is that clients who are considering to place their banking relationships in Switzerland would very often consider having their trust structures also administered in Switzerland. The reason for these two choices, trustee services or financial services, the driving forces are very, very similar. Switzerland is a major financial center. It is geographically quite well situated in a part of the world where in the morning you can be speaking to somebody from Asia, in the afternoon you could be speaking to somebody from Latin America, and then there is everything in between. But I think, the fact that Switzerland is politically stable and that it has this well-regulated standards are all things that play to our strengths.
But also, if your banker and your trustee are in the same location or same country, it's easy to meet up. The requirements are very similar in terms of account opening, or you're very aligned. And if the client then needs to come in to see you both, the ease of it is important, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, people travel to Switzerland for business and for pleasure.
Absolutely.
And yes, they have a banking relationship here already. They have advisors here already. And it is not just convenient, but it's very comforting for a client to come.
Reassuring.
Absolutely. They come here, they meet with a banker, and they can either in the same day meet with their trustee, or sometimes you can even sit in the same room and make sure that everybody's interests are aligned. This is, I think, one of the major choices. It's not a legal reason, but it's a soft reason, but it's an extremely important reason. Switzerland is, after all, well known for its private service to clients, and it is that aspect that clients love very, very much.
So for clients choosing a different type of foreign law to be administered in Switzerland, what are the implications of that choice?
There are a couple of implications, David. The one that most people think of is sometimes they look for a very specific feature in a trust law that they would like to apply to their structure.
If they give them more control, for example, or something like that.
Give them some, reserved settlor powers.
Yeah.
Trusts is a buzzword. Or maybe a specific type of investment that they would like to apply. But it is more than just the proper law. The trustee needs to ensure that they will administer the trust according to that foreign law. But whilst nobody wants anything to ever go wrong, you also need to think a little bit ahead and think about what will happen if there is a dispute one day. And the trustee should be carefully drafted to actually consider this aspect. One of the benefits of a Swiss trustee is that you can be silent on this aspect, and you can rest assured that under the Hague Convention, if something ends up in the Swiss courts, that the Swiss courts should apply the law of that foreign country when they make a decision around this trust dispute. However, sometimes people are concerned about the fact that a judge who has not actually worked with trusts previously has to make maybe a very, very important decision around trust law. So what you can do is you can even nominate the forum for disputes in a trust deed. Practically what this means is your trust is administered in Switzerland according to the laws of a different country. And if there is ever a dispute, you can also go to that other country and have the courts there actually have the forum or the power to make decisions around that dispute. It is something that is often overlooked, but it is a very, very important consideration and choice that a client can have.
Thank you for explaining that.
Thank you.
And do you see certain geographies being a bigger part of the client book? I mean, perhaps in Zurich or here. I mean, the Middle East is a huge market, and there's lots of opportunity with Switzerland, Far East, also LATAM. I mean, can you kind of condense it into different parts of the world, or is it really so diversely spread that you couldn't pick out specific regions? You
asked for the word condense, and that's the word condense is the whole world comes to Switzerland to bank.
Yeah.
And I am amazed every day with the variety of clients that I see. I really think that every major market is represented in Switzerland. If they travel here for banking, they are equally interested in placing their trust administration in Switzerland. I mentioned previously about the geographical spread, but Latin America is generally well represented amongst the clients that we see. Asia is increasingly becoming quite an important market, if you want to call it that way. Middle East, absolutely. Europe, of course, as well. We are sitting in the middle of Europe. You really do see everybody coming here. But it's not just clients who bank in Switzerland who come to us with an interest in trustee services. You also get clients who want to forge a stronger link with Switzerland by immigrating here, by relocating to Switzerland, and planning your affairs before you move to Switzerland. I think similar to any relocation anywhere is an important part of that process. So we do increasingly see clients come and discuss these aspects with us as well.
And what are some of the key features of that? Is it looking at the asset base that the client has and looking what tax liabilities would be triggered on a move, aligning the tax fiscal years? And I imagine it's something you work closely with tax and legal specialists on getting the planning absolutely right.
That is right. We cannot work in isolation. We do not provide legal and tax advice. I would like to think that we have a keen awareness of the aspects that will impact on a client. Sometimes a client comes to us already with being well advised, having spoken to their advisors, both where they are currently resident as well as with advisors in Switzerland. Sometimes they come to us with a vague idea of, I want to do X, Y, Z. Can you tell me where to start? And this is where it's so valuable that we have a network of advisors, not just in Switzerland, but also around the world, because Trident in particular have a network.
If there's a better solution somewhere, you can talk about
it. Exactly. But generally, you used the word condense before. I can condense it by saying that we cannot work in isolation. We heavily rely on a network of professionals to work in the interests of a client.
And what would you say is the profile of someone looking at a move to become resident? Is it people still creating wealth? I mean, a lot of people would know about the forfait and the fact that it's really for people who've perhaps cashed out of a business in a different phase of life. What is it? Do you see a blend of different people coming to Switzerland, still making money and still building companies, or is it in a different phase of life, do you see?
You are right. The answer is yes. You still see extremely wealthy individuals who have made their wealth elsewhere, who are looking towards Switzerland for many different social and geopolitical reasons. It is, however, not just your fabulously wealthy individual who relocates to Switzerland. A trend that I have noticed is that it is not always just the forfait clients that we are interacting with. You are seeing more and more C-level executives who are coming to Switzerland, and they need to equally be advised before they make that move. It is diverse.
And what kind of assets do you see in the trust administered in Switzerland? I mean, I know there's a lot of expertise, for example, here in the art space because of the free port, and there's certain asset classes, obviously the banking assets that we discussed. But what is it that you tend to see in terms of the assets that clients are holding within trust structures here in Switzerland?
The most common asset, as we mentioned before, is bankable assets, but it is by far not the only asset. You quickly start to discuss with clients things like art, what are their passions. We do see clients having life insurances as part of their overall planning, combined with trusts and company structures. You also see holding companies within trusts, and underneath this holding company can lie a whole Christmas tree, which would include things like real estate. These can be real estate that is there for the personal occupation of the family. It could also be residential or commercial real estate with a commercial angle to it. Really, there is almost no asset that you cannot consider. The question becomes more one of what are the expectations of the clients? Is it practical to have that asset in the trust structure? What are the risks to the trustee? What are the risks to the client? Will this be possible to administer in an effective way and in a cost-effective way? You really need to balance up all of these factors to decide whether an asset is appropriate to be administered within a structure. But it is extremely diverse, and it is all a matter of discussing and communicating what the expectations are.
And on the real estate front, do you see places like London clients owning UK the strong ties between the UK and Switzerland for services? What's your read on the UK at the moment and attracting high net worth clients? And do you see that UK assets coming up in the structures that you're managing?
We very, very often have structures that have UK assets. When there is UK real estate in a structure, there are some additional consideration. This is where this network of professionals come in. You really should not do this without getting expert advice. Banking relations in the UK, Switzerland's not the only major financial centre in the world. I would say that the UK and London is another one of those. And yes, we do see an increased interest in clients who have assets in the UK who are considering their trusts in Switzerland. It is just one of many factors that we see. Clients are diversifying not just their investments, they are also diversifying their structures. They don't just create one structure with all the wealth that they have all around the world in one structure. We are seeing more and more that there is this combination of having a structure that is administered in Switzerland that maybe holds the European assets, and with European, absolutely, UK comes in there, Switzerland comes in here. But you also see clients who place assets from Asia into structures in Switzerland in order to diversify their investments and their structures.
And do you think that the UK-based advisors, now we've had this change in Swiss trust law, that will start adopting Swiss structures where they may have used the go-to was to go to the Channel Islands. Do you think that behaviours will start to change, and actually when they see different fact patterns now, they'll start adopting that?
I don't think behaviours will necessarily change. We work extremely closely with our colleagues in the Channel Islands. Trident has an office in the Channel Islands. And as an example, I think that you will probably see at tonight's function that there are many people represented from the UK and from Switzerland. There will be an event that we will be attending in London in about a month and a half. And I see the same sort of collaboration that is taking place between Channel Island professionals and Swiss professionals. The Channel Islands traditionally is one of the jurisdictions that many people like. And the fact that Swiss trustees is becoming more well known means that clients now have the choice. Do I want to have let's say a Jersey law trust and have that trust administered in Jersey? Or would I like to have that administered in Switzerland, where I can maybe get the best of both worlds because I travel to Switzerland for whatever reason.
And as you say, clients don't have a singular structure anyway. To have more options is good because there's more in the toolkit.
It is all about choice. It is all about doing what is right for the client and looking at the various factors that give them the best balance.
So you mentioned working closely with colleagues in the Channel Islands. You also, I know you work very closely with colleagues in Cyprus and other parts of Europe and further afield. So perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about the Trident Group, how you slot into it, which offices you perhaps interact with more, or where you see the opportunity of working within the group.
What I can say is that we are all in Trident extremely proud of the fact that we are a global organization and that we are privately owned. It runs through our DNA. Clients value both these factors. For me personally, it is extremely rewarding every day, not just to speak with clients who are from different parts of the world. When I come across a situation where my own knowledge is not sufficient, or where I feel that a little bit of specialized advice from one of my colleagues in a different part of the world could be helpful, you contact them, you work together. And I think this collaboration. We are in 25 different countries. Well, actually, it's now more than 25 countries around the world. We have, with Switzerland, 16 trustee licenses in locations like BVI, Cayman, Bahamas, but also onshore, Singapore, Switzerland now, South Dakota, where there are US links, very, very valuable. This collaboration and relying on working together with our colleagues is something that I think is a major strength for Trident, but also an aspect that I very, very much enjoy, this teamwork that we have and working together with our clients.
So when we open up the event later on, we're going to kick off with a case study discussion, which you're going to take part in alongside US tax. I mean, what sort of features that will look at a Swiss-centric family with some US connections and investments? I mean, what is it that you see coming up from the US side, and what sort of thing we'll be talking about on the panel later?
Yes, David, I think what we can expect to see is the highlighting this way in which we partner with professionals. US tax are the tax and legal specialists, and we work extremely closely with them, not only to ensure that you initially establish the right type of structure for your clients, but you also continue to administer it efficiently and correctly for them, that you do the right type of filings, that you continually review the situation, and together that you work in the interests of the client.
Well, thank you for talking to me today, Sandra, and we look forward to sharing this interview.
Thank you very much, David.